All right, happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into Fresh Takes with Russo and Felice, minus the Felice portion today for that. I am Paul Russo, live from the FairLakes1.com studios. Third floor, North Park Building, Senegal Falls, New York. I beg to differ on the beautiful portions of that today, but that's my own personal preference.
Ray.
But Paul Russo, Nick, obviously not here, sick. Hopefully he is feeling better. He should be back next week. Knock on wood, no problem. But luckily we got some very excellent pinch hitters joining me today. Josh Durso sitting in for the first time on Fresh Takes. Appreciate you stepping in.
Maybe drop the excellent part. You got a pinch hitter.
Yeah.
I'm a pinch hitter.
All right, fair enough. And producer Nate Sharman will have a bigger voice than usual today. Really looking forward to hearing you guys the stuff on football. It was I'd say quite the weekend.
Great weekend for football.
Really the AFC ended up, I'd say, having the main headlines. The NFC stayed pretty much about as chalk as you could in terms of, I guess, everything from really betting line to actual result at that point. But obviously now the focus turning to this weekend with championship weekend, so we'll discuss all that. NHL nearing the All-Star break, so we'll really talk about that for really the first time in a while, but mainly on the East Coast side of things. And then Scott Rolen, the only baseball player elected to the Hall of Fame, so we'll discuss that a little bit. I know a lot of the takes at this point have kind of been churned up and have been the same, but certainly some interesting stuff to maybe dissect a little bit there. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. We'll start on the Saturday side of the divisional round. Jaguars at the Chiefs. Chiefs winning 27-20, and much to a little bit of their own attempts to lose it in a couple spots, I'd say. But it ended up being an excellent game, I thought. I thought Jacksonville, at moments, probably themselves even lost themselves the game a little bit. I mean, the fact that you allow Chad Henne, 35-year-old Chad Henne, to go. Obviously, it's classified as a 98-yard drive, but, I mean, they ran the ball really for half of it, so take that what you will out of it. But, you know, what was a really great game in that now becomes the Patrick Mahomes injury storyline moving forward.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because, you know, the Jaguars are just outmatched, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was just clearly outmatched. The outcome, even with the injury, it is what it is. You know, better luck next year kind of situation. And everything turns to that injury, which I think we'll probably talk more about it later. I think is a bigger deal than anybody realizes right now.
Right.
I saw lots of videos over the last couple of days on Twitter of Patrick Mahomes just walking in and out of press conferences. Mm-hmm. Like that's going to be an indicator of how well he's going to move around. He's not going to be scrambling. No. It's going to be a different Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
So
I mean, the fact of the matter is too, and I don't want to do the revisionist thing here, but you know, you go to fast forward to say Sunday night, and we'll jump into that portion of it more here in a second, where, you know, they're saying Tony Pollard, when he got hurt, it's a similar injury to Patrick Mahomes. Mind you, his was a little bit worse. He has a broken fibula. I mean, that's a fairly major surgery that he'll have to endure here in a couple weeks. But the ligament stuff is the same as what Patrick Mahomes has.
So, yeah, understanding and I guess accepting the fact, right, that the Chiefs are the better team.
Right.
I think the bigger question is, what would you have rather seen? A full strength Jacksonville team in the championship, or would you rather see a hobbling Patrick Mahomes, which still is probably better than 95% of starting quarterbacks in the NFL,
right?
With all the weapons that he has. You know, if we're going to look back at it like that, I'd almost say that I would have rather seen the Jacksonville-Cincinnati matchup than the Chiefs. Even though I think for the NFL, there's obviously a lot of clout and energy and excitement around that rematch, of course. So
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I think the storyline aspect of it's what the NFL. I mean, that's already been the storyline this week. Not so much the injury where it should be, but it's been that narrative of it's Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, part 4 or 5 now, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
already it's pretty interesting on that front. Nate, were you in tune? I know your focus was mainly on Sunday, which again we'll get to in a second. But
I mean, we don't have to get to that if we don't want to.
Well,
I know we're kind of pressed for time on this
gonna
show
have
today,
to.
so it's it's something we've had to talk about a lot this week, and I've had to come to reality. So if we don't get to it, Paul, if we have to talk about like the Australian Open or something like
Feels
that
like
that's
he's
going
dodging.
on.
Does it
then
feel
we
like
can
he's
do that.
dodging?
Where Pagula also lost, by the way, in the Australian.
Oh, she did? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Sorry.
tough
Ouch.
week.
Ouch.
Sabres are good though.
Yeah, we'll get to, obviously we'll get to that too, but I mean, as much as I love Trevor Lawrence, I still think I'd rather prefer the hobbled Mahomes a little bit in a way, only because I just think maybe the quality of the overall team aspect is what you brought up, Josh. Actually, it's just probably a little bit better for the moving forward aspect.
How good is Patrick? I mean, we already know that Patrick Mahomes is like the best quarterback in the NFL right now, but how good is he when you take away that mobility? I think this weekend is going to be a huge answer to that question. And let me tell you, if he goes out and throws for 300 yards and has a crazy good game, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at him differently if he does it by staying in the pocket. Now, if he somehow comes out and is able to run around like a lunatic, then I guess all of that aside, the injury wasn't that big a deal. But if he's clearly injured and he still has a great game, all of a sudden I think we're talking about like all of a sudden you might be able to start to have a conversation about is he one of the best quarterbacks ever, because he is,
Well, I think we saw a little bit anyway of that in the second half when he came back out anyway. It took him really the better part of all the third quarter when he was out there to kind of get some sort of stability and know what he kind of could or couldn't do on that ankle, more or less, really. So, and the key thing is, it's his right leg. That's the plant foot. That's where all your power is driven from. I think we saw a little bit where even the little out routes were not, he was clearly compensating.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't as accurate, for one, because he had to just more or less do the loft aspect of it to make sure the ball got to where it needed to go sometimes. Anytime you had to put a lot of zip on it, it ended up being very low, very more of a challenge.
He was struggling even to hand the ball off.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, too. Well, I mean, when you're coming back like that, that still is your plant foot.
It's
I'd
also
say 9 times out of 10.
It's such a hard injury too, because it's all stability.
Right.
Like all high ankle sprain or any kind of that. It's strictly a stability injury, and you're for those athletes at that level, like stability is like the one thing that they have in spades.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we need to spend too much time on the Saturday night game. Eagles 38, Giants 7. Obviously, I think the main storyline really out of this more than anything was the fact that the Giants really did punch above their weight class.
Maybe that's why Nick's not here today.
There's probably a plethora of reasons if we're doing the sport route, but it might be celebrating McCutcheon's signing still 2 weeks after the fact, for all we know. But Giants punch above their weight class. I mean, the Eagles really showed why they were the number one seed kind of going into this deal. That was a very much so a statement game, I thought, from them.
yeah, I think that chain of events, even going back to the week prior when the Giants showed that they were superior in their game against Minnesota, it makes sense. Did anybody really give them a serious chance on Saturday?
I kind of kicked the tires on only because I kind of live by the theory in football it's harder to beat a team a third time.
Our own Rebecca Swift did.
Well, yeah. But you could tell square away that if you bet the Giants or you're a fan of the Giants, you're probably in for a bad time pretty quick.
The Eagles are just a very, very good team.
Yeah.
Like all around, they might be other than the Chiefs, I'm not really sure there's a team that's more well-rounded, or Cincinnati for that matter. I think, assuming that, we'll get to it. Assuming that Philadelphia gets through this weekend, I think we're shaping up to see one of the more impressive offensive-defensive duels here in a couple weeks.
So, fast forward to Sunday, really the games of the weekend it ended up being Bengals and the Bills, 27-10, Bengals with the victory. Played well within a snow globe, to say the least, for the most part in that game. I think there was a moment, in the second quarter where the snow finally kind of eased off for about 2 seconds and kind of went back to the way it was at the start and way through the finish. But I know obviously around here, both in the office and across the region, a lot of finger pointing going on in Buffalo right now. It seems like, to a degree, it seems like they're struggling to find blame to be placed on a single entity, and I don't think you can do that with this.
Can't we just blame injuries?
This is not
the team.
That's the easy way out, though.
Yeah, but it's a fact. Like the remaining Bills defense. Forget the DeMar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining Bills defense that we saw last weekend is not what it was in September when the season started.
Mm-hmm.
Just isn't.
No.
So I don't know how you could have the same expectations, and similarly, I don't know how you can try and point to other people as blames. You literally were outmatched again by a Cincinnati team that was just all around better. Could the Bills line have played better? Protect Allen? Sure. But what are you doing?
I think
to that end, I'd say, the Cincinnati's missing 3 offensive starters on the offensive line, and the Bills still were able to get pressure. So I think you can say injuries for a lot of different teams
to that
in sports,
end, though,
especially in the playoffs for sure.
To that end, though, in the snow, the offense will always have an edge on the defense. It does. At that point, I think the stuff like that in the trenches on the line kind of gets nullified because the offense knows where they are going at all times in a condition like that. When you're struggling for grip, for example, on defense, it makes things a little bit easier if you're the backup left guard, But to that end, it's actually hard to kind of even eliminate maybe the Hamlin stuff because you got to remember Hamlin technically was the backup going into this year, so they were on a third string cornerback technically depth-wise out there. The other injury I want to bring up with this because Josh, you've been the only one in my mind who's really kind of said this. Josh Allen has not been the same quarterback
post injury.
Really October.
It's that injury, and I listened to the press conference. I think it was yesterday or the day before, where he said, he didn't anticipate anything long term. It's going to be fine, not require surgery or anything like that. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You're admitting that you were hurt. Right. You were hurt. This in my mind, the stats don't lie. He was. You want to talk about different? Mm-hmm. He was a different quarterback weeks 1 through 6. Right. After week 6, that injury happened. He was not the same. He did not play the same. He did not play to Josh Allen standards. He was doing things that, he wasn't. You didn't typically see him do. And one thing that he did say in the press conference that I thought was interesting, he did admit that it required some slight mechanical changes for a while, but he kind of played that off as being like a few week thing.
It's not, though.
My thought is those mechanical changes kind of stuck because the injury never really had a chance to fully heal. And
that part of it goes back to me what I said, and I wouldn't say blasted for it, but people didn't like when I said sit out the few weeks, get the thing healed up. Clearly nobody was really going to get to you in the division.
But there was legitimate concern about that. And I understand in the moment you don't know what that's going to, you don't know if the Jets and the Dolphins are going to, you don't know what's going to happen with Tua.
To be fair, that's true at the time, especially actually more, not even on the Dolphins side, but the Jets side. The Jets side, they were, I think it was 4 games above 500 at the time still?
Yeah.
They were 6-2 kind of at the post, or really at the beginning of this. So, yeah, that's fair. Nate, I will turn over to you because I do think you have some semi-legitimate gripes with play calling on both sides of the ball.
Oh, it's been terrible all year for me.
So it's interesting because both coordinators have gotten calls about head coaching positions. Would you be, I guess, opposed to seeing either one of them just kind of walk and not be fired this offseason?
I'll retain Leslie Frazier. There's a lot of Bills fans that don't. The defensive coordinator. A lot of Bills fans that don't like him for reasons that he's faltered in the playoffs the last couple of years. Ken Dorsey, I don't really see him coming back to the Bills. Brandon Beane in his press conference yesterday talked about Dorsey in year 2, so it appears that they may not make a change, but who knows at this point. They did fire their safeties coach today. I don't know if that's got anything to say. He's been with McDermott for a few years now. Tough for the safeties coach. We talked about injuries, right? And injuries have been plentiful for the safety position. Micah Hyde earlier in the year, DeMar Hamlin. Those are 2 huge guys, so the safeties coach was let go today. Could be a sign of more things to come, but they could just run back the same coordinators. Would be a little scary if they keep Ken Dorsey around next year, but maybe he can improve in year 2. Who knows?
Is that just a matter of changing the style of play calling, though? Like, I don't see how a coordinator, after seeing the results from this year, wouldn't, on his own, or even
Adapt, right?
from McDermott's point of view, say, okay, we need to make some adjustments. Not necessarily like, we don't need to, like, eliminate you, but, perhaps we need to rethink some things here.
Yeah,
Philosophy.
For sure, and it's something, they threw the ball so deep. I mean, they had a vital 3rd and 2 in that third quarter. They're down about 10 points, and they threw like a 40-yard pass to Gabe Davis. It's like, what are we doing? I know we may have the look where we think we can go deep, but it's almost like an opportunity where you have a guy like Cole Beasley, a guy like Stephon Diggs run a route to get the first down. And I know that's, I'm not a credible football mind like a lot of these people, but it's interesting that they just would throw it deep. You take a look at the Joe Burrow's chart versus Josh Allen's chart after that game, and Josh has so many incompletions and attempts, down the field, and Joe Burrow was finding open holes in that secondary, within 15 yards, a lot of them. So it's just interesting to see 2 different huge game plans, and one obviously worked for the Bengals.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's fair.
I mean, what change? If I'm the Bills, I don't know what changes I'm making drastically. Like, I don't think defense at full strength. Miller comes back, assuming he comes back healthy. I don't think you need to make a ton of changes on the defensive side of the ball because, as we're going to discuss here, I'm sure, in the next few minutes, is you don't win in this league on defense. You win on offense. You need to score points.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Running game?
Not to
running
go,
game?
I guess, further down the path there, but yeah, I mean, I think if anything, the Bills, I mean, it goes back to, in my mind, what I've been saying really the past 4 seasons, where it's, you get a true number 1 back in there, you get probably guys on the line a little bit more improved in a couple spots,
Yeah,
stuff
they need
like
to invest
that,
in
so.
the offensive line for
Yeah.
sure.
And I mean, I don't know, I think, it will be interesting. I mean, the one part we haven't really discussed in this, and I don't see maybe a need to exactly right now is the Stephon Diggs. What will end up probably being nothing more than just a
That'll
spat in the moment, but
Everybody needs to get over that.
right. No,
Get over
yeah.
it.
I mean, that's
If you're
part,
mad about that, just get over it.
well,
Who cares?
it's part of his MO. I think people kind of forgot because the past couple of years have been tame for him, but that's just the way he's kind of always been. You know, so
I'm indifferent about it, though. I know, I understand that he's that fierce competitor, right? And, he's allowed to do that, of course. But at some point, he's a captain of this team. He's a leader of this team. Why can't a guy like Josh Allen or a guy like Deion Dawkins, why can't he do that? Why is Stephon Diggs get a pass? If Josh Allen went and complained and didn't show up to the media presser and flipped out, I think he would be getting a lot of heat. So why is Stephon Diggs allowed to do it?
I don't think he's being allowed to do it. I think there are
He definitely is being allowed to do it. They all the teammates dismissed him, and the coach and the GM
to
and
me,
everybody
what that tells
dismissed
me,
it.
but what that tells me though is there's a clear communication path between Diggs and the people who matter within that.
If
Yeah,
Josh
that's
Allen did
United
it, there would
Front
be some
thing,
hit
I feel
pieces
like.
about him,
Yeah.
about how he's not a leader, about how he's not a quarterback, and he can't be successful in this league if Josh Allen did that.
To me, the people who are making the big deal about this more than anybody else are your Skip Baylesses of the world who their time of spewing out nonsense is coming to an end.
Well, So, as a Bills fan, are you more concerned about him not showing up to the presser afterward and leaving, just leaving abruptly, or the I don't want to call it an altercation, but
The act.
clearly the scuffle that it appeared he had with Josh Allen?
I think I'd be more upset.
I'd be more concerned with that if it's
I'd
me.
be more upset personally. I'd be more upset with the act only because, from experience in a couple of different other sports where you stick a mic in a guy's face after they're mad and heated, a lot of times stuff comes out in the mouth that nobody's gonna like. So
Yeah.
I'd be more upset with the act than the fact that he didn't come and talk for 2 minutes.
I'm definitely more upset with him not showing up. If I'm upset at all, I'm not
Or
really that.
You're upset with him showing up and not the act?
Yeah, I don't mind the altercation on the side of the field.
Okay.
That happens all the time. Peyton Manning and his linemen used to yell at each other all the time. Brady yells at his linemen, yells at his receivers, and no
fair.
one really cares. That's just football. That's when tempers are running high and you want to win. So
For me, I don't
that's a
care
big
either way.
nothing burger for me. Them yelling on the sidelines.
My only caveat to that, or I guess if I'm going to play devil's advocate, would just be you just described Super Bowl winning quarterbacks,
Right.
and
When
there
we
is a difference, especially with a team. I feel like this team is kind of at a weird crossroads where it doesn't have to feel like the sky is falling. But I think for some people in the Bills organization, it might feel like the sky is falling because there is like the possibility in the next couple of years that this ship turns the wrong way.
Yeah, they faltered 3 years in a row in the playoffs.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think it's so much that. I think it's the fact that clearly the Dolphins are probably more at your back door than you think, for one.
Fair. Yeah.
And clearly the Jets, if they ever get really the offensive side of the ball figured out, they're right there with you as well.
And right now, in the best case scenario, the absolute best case scenario for the Bills, they are the third best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more of a
without-
problem for me.
without
than
any.
the AFC East. I don't really. The AFC East is obviously improving, but then there's so many good quarterbacks in the AFC, and they're all young. I mean, you have 5 good young quarterbacks already, and then the Jets hired Nathaniel Hackett today as offensive coordinator. Really good friends with Aaron Rodgers. That's kind of what the Broncos were trying to do last year, but didn't work out for them. They could get it. I mean, if they get Aaron Rodgers, another guy comes to the AFC, you could have a really stacked AFC, and then it's just impossible to get through the playoffs.
Aaron Rodgers should just retire.
Yeah. Speaking of young quarterbacks, the final game Sunday, end of the weekend, was 49ers-Cowboys. 19-12, 49er victory. More than anything, I'd say come down to quarterback play of 2 different varieties. And I think I'm going to zig here. Everybody's kind of zagging a bit, in a way, on the Dak front. I don't see how you can actually be that upset with him, in a way. Like, you know what you got out of him. Hold on here. I saw your face, Josh. Take it from somebody.
I hope Nick would crush you if he listened to you. If he listened to you say something like that,
he would. But he's so far down the haterade with the Cowboys that it's whatever. That in this situation, I needed to kind of take blinders off at certain points with this, because I know from fan experience with this, with Washington and Kirk Cousins, you can let that quarterback walk, in particular, in this case Dak, and that's fine. You're allowed to do that as a team and as an organization. But I can tell you this, the grass ain't always greener on the other side in terms of, like, trying to find that next guy. And it's tough because Dak is clearly good enough to get you to mid-January. I don't know if he's good enough to get you further. And maybe that comes down to, do you make Tony Pollard the number 1 next year if he's able to go week 1 type thing? Stuff like that. But and then on
if you do that, then you might as well just cut ties.
Well,
right?
I don't necessarily disagree. But and then on the flip side here, Brock Purdy, again, he did decently well enough, but I think the cat's kind of out of the bag. I think teams have enough film on him now at this point that even if you have an average defense like Dallas has, that you're able to surround him pretty quick and put him in a box that, yeah, I think the 49ers become very one-dimensional as a team in terms of that defense that they have becomes the end-all, be-all to their advancement potentially to Super Bowl 57.
They are, so I'll set the 49ers aside for now. I think they've overperformed to a million to what the expectation should have been for them. And with Brock moving forward, they should just be happy as clams, and there's a good chance they could win this weekend, and everything's wonderful.
Yeah.
Cowboys, let's rein everything in. Dak Prescott needs to go. He needs to go. He is not worth the $19.7 million that he made this year, right?
Fair.
Just getting to the middle of January with nothing else. He's essentially Tony Romo 2.0. As an organization, you need to want more.
Right.
He's way too expensive. I think his contract's like 2025-ish, right?
Yes.
So I don't even know who would want him now or then, unless he does something incredible next year.
I'd be honest, I'd gladly take him up in the Delmarva area.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I mean,
you're getting Brady. Relax.
Poverty franchise, sure. Yeah,
right.
okay.
Lamar Jackson.
But that is, unless he's going to demote himself, because I think the idea here is that the Cowboys are always a contender, right? Mm-hmm. In theory, they're always a contender, even if maybe they're not always a contender.
For the better part of even though they've only had one playoff win now since '96 or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean they've been pretty much the stalwart team out of the East.
So like you need two.
Yeah.
You need like it needs to be more than that at this point for the Cowboys.
Definitely.
And it's not. I think the quarterback position is the one position on that team where you can point to and say, there was a lot of emphasis on defense, especially in the beginning of the year with them.
Yeah.
Dak had moments throughout the year. Run game, clearly not a problem for them.
Right.
Where do you change? What do you fix? I think with the steady flow of really good quarterbacks coming out of college now every couple years, I think it gets harder and harder and harder.
I'm happy you said every couple of years because I
get it that it's not every year.
I'm of the opinion that this year's class is not as great as people think. But
that's fine, and the answer might not be in this year's class, but the answer very well could be in next year's class. And I certainly don't think Dak is worth, 2024 begins next year.
Fair. Yeah.
He's not worth a new contract, is he? If all you get out of him is a trip to the divisional round?
It all depends. I mean, that's the tough part about it. Like I said, to me, the way you look at the landscape in some teams, I mean, it's just tough.
I would rather have Brady or Rodgers
Oof, I'm not
in Dallas than Dak. You give Brady what Dak had this year, the outcome is very different. And if you don't believe that, then I don't know, because all we heard this year.
I do believe.
Because
I'm with you on that one.
So what's to blame? To blame is the quarterback that either shows up and has an awesome week, or doesn't show up and just looks abysmal like he did last week and 2 weeks ago. Now
it's fair.
It's tough.
All right, let's move ahead to championship weekend then, because look, tickets to Super Bowl 57 can be punched, obviously. It's the last weekend of multiple football games until September.
That was really sad, Paul. Why'd you have to say it like that?
Well, I mean, we've been without Scott Hansen now for 2 weeks. I'm deprived.
You watch like NBA basketball now, or what?
Or Sabres hockey, but we'll touch on that. So.
That was tough.
We'll get to that. I have nothing but positive vibes coming up for them. But first game on Sunday, 3 p.m. on Fox. 49ers at the Eagles, 1-2 in the NFC. Eagles currently coming in as a 2.5-point favorite. Interesting. All of a sudden, it's become quiet this week about is Jimmy Garoppolo available for this game? Seems like Brock Purdy's still the guy that they'll roll with this week with no news on Garoppolo.
Imagine how much of a blunder that would be if, as an organization, you make that switch now.
Oh, you think it'd be okay?
We had this argument earlier, Paul. I agree with Josh.
Would be absurd. It would be absurd. It would be different if Brock had at any point shown any kind of weakness. Like only threw for 219 yards or whatever last week, but it was a 19-point offensive night for them. So he did what he had to do. Mm-hmm. I think he's their guy moving forward. Jimmy G can sit on the bench because that's all he ever should have been.
Okay,
bench warmer.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's tough because I think, look, the film out on Brock now, you're able to contain him up pretty good. So I don't know. I get both sides of the argument. I think I would just personally I'd lean on the Garoppolo side of things. He's been in this situation at this point, but I mean the key part in this is the fact that Garoppolo is clearly not going to be available for this the way it seems.
So even if he were available, let me throw this one at you.
Right.
He's available. You can go to him if you want to.
Right.
If you're Jimmy G, do you want to play and potentially lose the game after your backup has run the table and potentially take that hit in what would be the market that you're going to be entering here?
Fair. Yeah.
Or would you rather just sit and basically be the guy that everybody I think a lot of people agree that he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. Let him You got room for him in DC?
I
You
certainly
got
would.
starting space for him?
Certainly would if he were to
I mean,
decide to come.
so if I'm him, I want that to happen. Do you agree? Do you not agree with
I think
the premise?
I think the competitor in me says I'd rather have the ball in my hand type scenario. I think if you're doing the long game aspect of it, then yeah. I mean,
He's got to be past that
you
now,
won't-
right? He's been shipped around so many times. If
Gro-
there's
I mean, he's only been
anybody,
traded the one time, so I think it's a lot. I don't know. See, the tough part with it is, right, I think we've seen a lot now on both college and the pro side of things where we have these moments of these guys coming off the bench where whether it's like the true long-term injury, right, Foles coming in for Wentz, or the guy, in all honesty, that he'll be playing, that the 49ers are playing against with Jalen Hurts at Alabama, where they just kick him to the curb mid-championship game for Tua, and, you know, next thing you know, Tua's the hot commodity.
that's the nature of the game, though.
Right. I mean, I mean, I lean on I'd just rather have the ball in my hand type scenario, I guess.
Well, then
I
the
don't
answer
know.
to that is you haven't earned it.
Right.
Yeah, I know you got hurt and it
That's
was
fair.
out of your control, but like Brock is. Do you feel like Brock isn't the guy for them?
I don't think so. Not.
You feel like he's not the guy.
I don't. Moving forward outside this year, I don't think so.
That's incredible. That is an incredible statement to make for a guy who literally hasn't lost.
I made a mistake.
He hasn't lost.
I don't know. I'm not like out on him, but like at the same token, like I've been been riding this train now the past 2.5 years with Heineke, like in Washington. That
Always way better than Taylor Heineke. Come on.
I mean,
Come on, Paul.
no, but
NFC
the point
Championship. We're
stands,
here.
though.
We're here.
Right.
And he's done nothing but
Right.
win thus far and produce.
Yeah.
I mean, if it would be different if he goes out and lays a giant egg this weekend and looks like an abysmal rookie, then I guess
I just think, especially this weekend against clearly a defense that is at worst equal to what your defense is in terms of talent, in terms of just pure attribute in on-field production, at worst equal to yours, probably better in Philadelphia. Like, the Eagles' defense could have a field day on them. It's possible.
I mean, yeah, but that goes back to I think that
Right.
goes back to the other point,
Mhm.
which is that, like I said about, Cincinnati just being better.
Right.
The Eagles, I think, as a team, are just
They
better.
are. They are at this point.
So, but that doesn't change the fact that the 49ers, with another offseason to develop
Yeah.
with, I don't see how it's not
maybe
Brock's team.
The tough part moving forward is you have Trey Lance coming back next year, healthy,
He
and
stinks.
well, he's perceived. Look, they traded up for him. They're gonna have to at least give him another run. I mean, he got hurt game 1 this year. I mean, you're gonna have to give him a shot.
They're going to
think it was
get
game one.
They're going to get traded. That's all that's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Both of those guys that you're talking about are going to get traded.
Mm.
I don't see how this plays out any other way.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't know.
Brock he's taken them to the NFC Championship game.
Mhm.
I don't even know that you could find another scenario where, especially if they beat the Eagles, this weekend, holy cow.
I
You
mean, then
really can't do it
Well,
then.
then the narrative shifts, right? And then at that point, speaking of the Eagles, I hope we're not like kind of looking at another Nick Foles type situation, because I mean the playbook on that does not play out well for the guy in that situation, But
I think as an organization at that point, they would just go all in on their
yeah,
guy.
I mean, you probably do.
You
In that
go all in on
situation,
them.
you
You
probably do.
trade the others away, and you keep
Yeah.
it moving.
So here's the issue. I took the 49ers preseason here. And so it's kind of like one of those.
And
like,
here you are
Right.
talking them down.
Well,
See what you're doing.
it's tough to move off of them, obviously, when you have the pick. So I'll just have to stick by my guns and stick with the 49ers this weekend to beat the Eagles, because I have them obviously
Final score?
moving forward. I do legitimately think this is probably going to be. I mean, the over/under currently that I'm looking at is 46.
Same.
I
I'm also
think
saying that.
part of me thinks it does go under there. It's an interesting line, but I think something like a 21-17
Oh.
type game I could see. Yeah.
34-28.
Okay.
San Francisco.
All right. All right.
Final drive.
Okay. Oh, you're going with San Fran as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
The momentum's there, I think.
All right. Nate?
Eagles 19, San Francisco 15.
Wow.
Oh my God, that'll be the most.
15. That's an interesting little.
Robbie Gould day.
Oh,
Robbie
hey.
Gould day.
Kick
Go
some
five for
field
five,
goals.
I guess. And then obviously the nightcap, 6:30 on CBS. The Bengals at the Chiefs.
Such a good game.
This is look, Kansas City is now back to being a 1-point favorite, at least on the line I'm looking at.
Yep.
I don't know. I think clearly people are just having guesses in the wind, I think, at this point about how they feel about this game. If there was a true certainty, right, that Mahomes, he's going to play. I can't imagine a scenario that he at least does not start. Now, obviously, things could happen in the game where if he just goes on that ankle wrong, I mean, it's just toast. It's toast.
Yeah.
But, so I guess I'm not surprised to see the line kind of swing back in Kansas City's favor in that sense, being the favorites. But it feels an awful lot like the Bengals just have momentum on their side. I mean, they've had all this literally bulletin board material the past month now about, stemming obviously from the Monday night game with the Bills and moving forward with everything that, and I do agree with them on some spots, but the perceived notion that, the NFL has been gunning for a Chiefs-Bills game to determine who's going to represent the AFC and everything like that. It's tough, and I mean, I'm with you, Josh. I do believe as well the Bengals, as it stands right now, probably are collectively the better team.
Who do you think, if the Bills' defense is a 5 out of 10, and I'm not saying they are, I'm just using this as kind of a comparison.
Yeah.
Where would you put Kansas City's defense?
About the same. Kansas City's defense is a lot of bend don't break type stuff in the back end of it.
Yeah, very similar to the Bills.
Their front line's legit. I mean, Jones is an animal. Their front line is probably, if there's an edge, they probably have the edge there over the Bills, and that's about it. But other than that, to me, I mean, I think the Bills maybe have an edge in the linebacking core, and then the secondary is a toss-up.
So then how much different is an offense led by a hobbled Mahomes than the Bills' offense that we saw last week? There's a few extra weapons, yes, but hobbled Mahomes is a big thing. I could see a scenario where Cincinnati just throttles Kansas City. Throttles them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there because
Burrow at full strength.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that relates to health. And if you want to look at the weather, it's supposed to be clear/cloudy, which for football that's clear, but cold. 35.
Yeah.
Midwest 35 is a very cold 35. Trust me. I mean, it's like next to no humidity. It's a cold.
You want to talk about a Monday morning quarterback situation?
Yeah.
With Mahomes' injury, don't you think they would have loved to have played at a neutral site indoors, temperature controlled, smooth 72?
Definitely. I mean,
Smooth 72.
That's actually been. I've heard that. That's probably the third or fourth time I've heard that now. Actually, it's the fact that they were probably the ones really hoping that Buffalo did just take it to the Bengals, and the exact opposite happened. And the fact that you're given, the opportunity now that you're going to be playing on a grass field that odds are will not be at its peak conditions, obviously, because of the weather, on a bad ankle, not good. It's not good.
Predictions?
I don't know if it's going to be a throttle. I think Cincinnati wins by probably at least a possession. I feel confident going there. And a lot of it's just the fact that I just think if Mahomes steps wrong on that foot one time, on that ankle one time, it's done. It's lights out. Because at the end of the day, and this is a broader take for another time. I mean, I've never understood why teams have backup quarterbacks who aren't the same type as their starters. In a way, Chad Henne is not the same type as Patrick Mahomes.
Turns out it's hard to find another one of those Mahomes guys.
Well, no, but I mean, what I'm saying is, and this is probably not the right example to exactly use, right? But like, I'd rather have a guy like, say, RG3 back up Mahomes because at least they're
Similar-ish.
right.
Yep.
They're as they say in the 2K world, right? Their builds are similar in the fact that they're athletic and whatever.
yeah, one's on TV, one's playing football.
Well, right, but absolutely fair. Same with EJ Manuel, but either way. So I'm gonna go Bengals. I will go. I'm kind of with you. I do see maybe a little bit of a high-scoring affair though in this one.
Oh yeah.
I'd say I'll go 38-28 Bengals.
Oh, that's so close to where I was.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of with you in that. train.
I'm like back and forth between 38-24 and 42-24. Both of those outcomes with the Bengals ahead. Momentum, sure. I just think right now at the quarterback position, injuries included, better spot.
Yeah, 100%.
That's all.
Yeah. Nate, don't run away.
This is the week that Patrick Mahomes gets his revenge.
Oh.
Joe Burrow has beaten Patrick Mahomes 3 times in his career. Patrick Mahomes has not beat him. It's been a field goal game every single time. Chiefs 24, Bengals 21.
All right.
Chiefs, Eagles, Super Bowl 58?
Battle of
7. It's right on the screen. I still said it wrong.
Battle of
got
Andy
the-
Reid.
He's got the under. He's hammering the under.
Yeah. I mean,
That's incredible.
Don't blame him. All right, let's transition over here to some hockey here for a couple minutes. Nearing the All-Star break. Over halfway through, nearing the trade deadline. It's been a quiet-ish rumor mill I've seen for the most part outside of, I'd say, Vancouver trying to unload some guys. But I'd say that a lot of the main storylines have been on the East Coast side of things, the Eastern Conference. Boston's playing at an absolutely absurd rate to the point that, or Nate, you're probably more versed in this, obviously, than either one of us. Are they on the historic pace at this point?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
I think they're on track to mess with that point record. Linus Olmark's already broken some records. The Boston goaltender, former Sabre. Sabres let him go, and he went to Boston. Now he's breaking records, so that's just kind of how that goes. But, they've been just unbelievable. I think they have 5 losses all season.
Their current record right now
guess
is...
who's one of them? The Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, they're 38-5-4.
Yep.
I mean, that's just... And they're at 80 points. They have a 12-point gap back to Carolina. And Carolina and Toronto tied in second place. And if that's any indication, the top team out west in the Dallas Stars have 65 points. So what does that tell you? I mean, Boston, and it's just, and that's a team, right, that I kind of allude to a little bit with a couple other, sports like high school basketball. I talk about this a lot, where you get a group of youth, which Boston kind of has, and a group of vets, who they definitely have. That sometimes is just a tough unit because, I mean, everybody's going out there and you're just kind of playing, and you got guys who know what they're doing. They can be crafty. You got the guys who are quick enough that, obviously they're still building up that professional NHL level skill, but good enough that they can just mess around and find out. And that's kind of what Boston is doing in a way. I mean, I wouldn't say I expect them to miss the playoffs this year, but at the clip that they've been playing this year, I was pleasantly surprised. To see what they were doing. Yeah,
I think I piggybacking off that a little bit, Paul. I don't think that was an outlandish take to say that they could miss the playoffs. I definitely thought they'd regress this year. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, they're getting older. Bergeron's older, Krejci's older, all those guys.
I didn't think they'd miss the playoffs. I thought they'd be a wild card team. But to do what they're doing at this point in the season is just, I mean, come on, that's just absurd. If you want to do the further breakdowns, for example, they have an 83 goal differential at the moment. 83.
Yeah, their goalies have been
it's over double up on Dallas, who has the second best differential at 41.
Yeah, Olmark's been unreal, and Swayman's been good too, their backup.
Yeah. Sabres, though. Nate, your Buffalo Sabres. Josh, your incoming Buffalo Sabres. What a nice little pleasant surprise they've been so far. I think, kind of going into the year, if they were even at 500 at this point in the season, it'd probably be an over-accomplishment. all things considered, with the team that they kind of have, a young core, a little bit. But if we want to rewind the tape, I did say on this podcast that they kind of give me some Rangers vibes from last year, a little bit of a punch above the weight class situation potentially. 25, 19, and 3 at this point. Do have a positive goal differential at 20. And their core, young and very good at this point.
Yeah, they're a really fast team. And we need to make sure we remember, before we came in this season, all Buffalo's sports talk and myself too, we're talking about the Sabres need to perform this season and be there around the playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't get too wrapped into the Sabres are going to make the playoffs. Sabres are going to make the playoffs. With how much fun it is, we need to remember kind of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
More than likely, they won't make the playoffs, probably, because it's just so hard to make the playoffs, especially in the NHL, especially with the Atlantic Division being what it is.
Yeah.
And so we just need to remain kind of on track. I don't expect the Sabres to do anything crazy at the deadline. They throw out some names here and there, but they won't do anything that compromises their future for sure. So, but just been so much fun to watch in Saberland, and having this little 4-game streak comes at a good time for us Buffalo sports fans. After we lose the Bills, the Sabres just keep winning.
So you think that a guy like Bo Hovart's a bit too out of range?
They've been talking about Timo Meier here and there, who's also on the Canucks. Patrick Kane's always in the news, especially being from Buffalo. He carries a big cap hit. And Jacob Chikrin, a defenseman for the Coyotes. That's kind of quieted down a little bit, but it still could happen. The Sabres are probably looking for another defenseman. And
Buffalo is one of the, really, to be fair, rarer teams that you see just in sports in general. Technically below 500 at home, 11, 12, and 1. And on the road, they're 14, 7, and 1.
Yeah, I think they are.
Crazy.
They're very below 500, too, when our sports director, Kyle Evans, is in attendance. So I just wanted to put that out there.
It goes back to what we've discussed now a few different times. Unfortunately, during some of these weekday games, Buffalo doesn't turn out the best.
No.
And it seems as though this Sabres team doesn't play as well when the building isn't as packed. So, and it's a young team. It's you feel good about where they are, and like Nate said, if they're around come playoff time in the hunt, great. If they're in it, even better. But you feel good. You just feel good about where they are now.
Yeah.
Streaky, if nothing else. I guess if the one thing, maybe like these 2, 3, 4 game skids that seem to happen every few weeks, maybe if those can become less frequent.
I mean, to your point,
through the end.
To your point, their last 10, they're 5, 4, and 1.
Yeah, they're on a 4-game win streak right now.
Yeah, and
You'd almost rather, I guess in that scenario, I'd almost rather it be a more equal 500 run than it be a streaky 500 run if they are going to just play 500 the rest of the way. That way there I think mentally you'd feel better about it if it were more even rather than having these like, oh, we won 5, 6, 7 in a row. Oh, we've lost 4 or 5 in a row.
Well, I hear you there. I think that's a good confidence boost too for the younger guys because, I mean, look, you can kind of, I'd say I'd rather have the consistency out of them at this point, or at least build and be consistent than go out and perform, say, over the course of 10 games, 8-2 or something like that, or 8 or 8 like 1-1, something like that, as opposed to maybe that 4-4-2 you'd rather have where it's just consistent, better play. Shout out to my Lightning.
I'd rather be 8-1-1 than 4-2-2.
I don't maybe necessarily disagree, but I think it depends the type of puck you're being played there. Hey Nate, my Tampa Bay Lightning, hot take about them. I'm not overall thrilled with them this year.
Oh, really?
I have a lot of problems defensively with them still. Offense, it's there. Defense is where I worry. Just, to me, they don't seem to be the exact force they've been the past few years. I don't know if you view them in that realm as well, but...
Do you think they'll be able to turn it on?
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine so, but we'll see. We'll see. Any other surprises for you this season so far?
I think Boston and Buffalo are the biggest ones for me. I know we're talking so much about the East Coast today, but
I mean, the
Atlantic
West
Division is crazy to me. I mean, you have the 3 really good, almost 4 debatably really good teams.
I mean, the West has just been so...
As the kids would call it, mid.
God. I mean, I wouldn't say it's boring per se. Like, the great storylines for me out of the West all involve, like, gambling. Like, Arizona, for example, is something, like, in their 48 games, they've covered the first period goal line, like, in 40 of them.
Wow.
just like stuff like that where it's just not. I mean, it's cool for a very specific niche, but in the grand scheme of hockey, it's like, meh. You know.
Yeah.
I think if anything out west, the biggest thing has been Seattle clearly is
That's a
legit
great
this
story
year.
too. I forgot about that.
Right? And Winnipeg, we kind of talked about this oddly enough. I mean, they play Buffalo's in Winnipeg tonight.
That big game.
But the Jets appear to be on that last breath that teams kind of have when their window's kind of closing on them. And, I mean, they're second in the West. 31-17-1, 32 goal differential, 63 points. I mean, they don't wow you, but clearly they got to be doing something right, you know, if they're just kicking around still. So
Hang around. That's all you got to do. Just hang around until the playoffs.
Yeah.
Then anything can happen.
especially in hockey. I mean,
Especially in
hockey's the
hockey.
one where if you have the momentum, especially, it's
Sure.
got that going. All right, before we get out of here, do have to mention Scott Rolen, the only player elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame this year off the regular ballot, as we call it. He'll be joining Fred McGriff, who got in via the Veterans Committee, technically in December of 2022, for the class. Rolen, arguably, not really arguably, pretty much locked in as the second best third baseman of quote unquote our generation. I'm going to Adrian Beltre, who's on the ballot for the first time next year. But a lot of, I'd say, controversy, if you will, surrounding him, especially with the older crowd who just don't see him as a Hall of Famer. And I don't maybe outright disagree maybe with the principle of it, but to me he is. 70.1 WAR, career slash line of 281, 364, and 490. Also, by the way, an eight-time Gold Glove winner, which is fourth in history for third baseman. The only people he's behind is Brooks Robinson, a Hall of Famer with 20. Another Hall of Famer in Mike Schmidt with 10. And then a future Hall of Famer, Nolan Arenado, who's won the last 10 straight Gold Gloves in the NL. So,
Yeah.
A lot of the takes with it have kind of just been the same in and out stuff, and I don't disagree. I mean, trust me, this year I struggled a little bit in a way when we did our fictitious ballots last week, Concrete Jungle with 10 to get to 10, but I did find 10 that I thought were Hall of Fame worthy. Next guy in line was Todd Helton, who was 11 votes short to get in on this ballot. And to me, it's just a lot of revisionist history for people, I think, at this point. And look, it's something that we talked about yesterday, right? It's literally called the steroid era for a reason. It's the period that it was. And,
Oh, man. Yeah, look, everything being equal, if we're going to call, like you said, if we're going to say it, steroid era, then we need to accept the players who played in that era.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, is, there's lots of guys that I look at on the list, and I feel like over time they'll get in, or they could potentially get in. This whole system of, not just getting in off the bat when they're clearly worthy of being in. Looking at this list, it kind of, escaped me that, Andy Pettitte is, such an obvious, what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing?
And he is arguably one of the greatest postseason pitchers, if not the greatest postseason pitcher ever. And in the regular season as well, just such a dominant force for years.
And can we, since we are going to exclude the steroid era selectively with certain players, can we just kick the statistical stuff to the side since that's all a joke anyway?
Right.
And just make it what it is, which is kind of a quasi-popularity contest among a really niche group of people.
Right.
So let's just make it a popularity contest. And you bring in all of the players that had a larger than average impact or a historical impact on the game.
Right.
That means McGuire, Sosa. That means all the guys,
who saved baseball's popularity for even what it is today.
Yeah, and it means a guy like Andy Pettitte is like a shoo-in.
Right.
We talked about Keith Hernandez off the air the other day. Another good example, not just his contributions on the field, which I think are enough.
Now after the fact.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Also, his contributions off the field in the booth. You can't say that these guys didn't have a Hall of Fame worthy impact on the game. Right. I mean, you called it a de facto museum, and I think that's a fair assessment.
Museum at this point. Because, look, if you're going to have exhibits with Pete Rose memorabilia in it, if you're going to have exhibits with Barry
Oh,
Bonds,
Pete Rose is another one.
but
It's
it's
so
one of those things, right?
silly.
If you're going to have these exhibits with memorabilia of Rose and Bonds and Clemens, and you're going to have them in your building anyway,
Yeah.
and the only thing holding them back are a bunch of old dudes who are mad at them still for whatever reason because they didn't sign a ball for their kid back in the day or something like that, like, congrats. You win the battle of being the pettiest person on the planet then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
And the way I always look at it, too, is if you want to do the steroid thing, fine. I'm not going to – that's your opinion, okay? But if you're going to tell me that in 1997, the de facto year that people think Clemens and Bonds both started in regular usage of steroids, if you mean to tell me that after the 97 season, both of them got hit by a bus and died, you weren't voting them in like right on the spot, you're shot. You're dumb because you would have. And now after the fact, 20 years later, you're not going to because they did steroids, but you're mad at them for some reason. Come on.
It's silly because it's approaching a game that's so far from pure.
And it's literally
As a
called the
pure,
challenge game, too.
like,
Yeah.
it is silly. It is a completely silly proposition that you have these players that were larger than life figures in the game just excluded.
Right.
I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's completely insane.
Nate, I know you're kind of, I'd say, maybe one of the more ultimate examples of this. You know, you are a predominantly casual fan, and I mean, I think you bring up the best point in this, the fact that, you know, Alex Rodriguez really is the one that you pound the drum on, and I agree with you, but, you know, kind of like him and Manny are the two people towing the line on this, where it's, you know, these guys who have beyond exemplary Hall of Fame statistics and are, to exactly Josh's point, their contributions to the game. I mean, we talk about, still to this day in the lexicon of baseball, we talk about Manny being Manny, and Alex Rodriguez is in the media, albeit maybe a terrible job, but he's in the media. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit the nail right on the head. I mean, how can you have a Hall of Fame and not have one of your best players of all time in it? Like, we accept that the steroid era happened, and everybody. It's not like just Barry Bonds was doing it too. That's where I go back to a lot. You know, everybody was juicing, and that's just kind of how sports kind of work. You know, everyone's kind of working to get better and better than their peers, being able to play better than the other team too. I mean, that's the nature of sports, right?
Look, for some of these guys too, like Pettit's one that sticks out to me with this. He took steroids and HGH because that's what he was prescribed to get off of an injury on to help build back an injury better. Like, that's what was also prescribed to guys in the 90s, like, to help get that along.
It's
You
just,
know.
it's silly.
Yeah.
It's silly. Might you be able to say that it was unregulated?
Yeah,
But sure, it was new. It was a completely new thing.
It was like in the 60s and 70s and 50s, really, to be fair, with these guys who, by the way, they're Hall of Famers that did this. So I don't know who needs to plug their ears and spin around so that way they didn't hear us. But guys are in the Hall of Fame who took literally greenies, which are effectively a pill form of take your pick of cocaine or whatever the hell to keep you psyched up.
Wired.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just a fact. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news on you there, but you have guys in there who are literal drug users who had candy bowls full of them, like in the clubhouses, as if they were M&Ms. You know.
I mean, the game evolves.
Yeah.
I think it's no different to, if you're going to look back at that scenario and say, well, in the 90s they didn't deserve to get in. If you look at athletes present day and then look back 80 years ago at what so-called athletes look like then, you can say the same disparaging things about them because they were playing a completely different game in a completely different era under completely different rules, or not rules, but in a completely different culture. Just accept it for what it is.
100%. Yeah. All right. We have gone completely. Time went out the window with this one, so.
Time has gone.
Yes. So that will wrap up Fresh Takes for today. Josh, Nate, appreciate you guys stepping up and say hitting the home run here, steroids or not. So.
No problem. Nick, get back here. Hurry, please.
All right. So Fresh Takes, catch up anytime, YouTube, Spotify, Anchor. Be back again more than likely next Thursday, barring anything changing. So until then, have an awesome weekend, everybody. Enjoy football multiple times over one last time.